Yeah, it looks that way. Couple of lava spikes, a wooded foothills. Okay, this is a good hand though. This is a good 6. Jorj will scry to the top, it looks like. And doesn't matter, he's going to have a foothills regardless, so sacrifice away that wooded foothills. Jorj will fall to, I imagine, 17. Yep. And Rick will go to 19 from the attack from the Swift Spear, of course.
Things to do this right. Also,
Oh.
it was weird, but yeah, ended up not being.
All right, so I got necklace now. All right, so Jorj of the Plains. He does have a path to exile in his hand, it looks like there, so it's just going to wait to fire that off, I guess, which is fine. Jorj will shock in a Stomping Ground down to 15. He goes. He can just fire off both these lava spikes, which it looks like he's going to do. So fire off a lava spike. Rick's going to go to 16. He's gonna fire off Path and Response, which is fine. So Jorj will get a land. Rick will fall to 16. And then we're going to see Jorj shoot off a second copy of Lava Spike. Yeah, he does. So Rick now down to 13. But the threat is taken care of in the Monster Swift Spear. That mountain is into play tapped, of course. So we'll make sure he doesn't use that. All right, and we're back to Rick for his turn too. So Brushland is going to bring down a Spellskite. It's a pretty good one. It's a sideboard card. He's got a couple of them, in fact. So, but a pair of Boros Charms don't care about a Spellskite. Deflecting Palm doesn't either. None of those spells target players. All right, so let's take 4. Yeah, Rick's going to read that, but you cannot redirect that one, sir. That's just 4 damage to an opponent. Rick now at 9. Let's see what happens here. Only 2 mana for Rick still. He doesn't have a temple here or anything just yet. He's going to start with Ancient Stirring, so down to 8 he goes. If Jorj can find a third Boros Charm, he'll just win. Across 2 turns, unless Rick brought in the Stubborn Metal, which he might have. Again, this is game 2, so there is some post-board play to be factored in here. In fact, we can see it in Jorj's hand. He brought in his Deflecting Palms. He has 2 in his sideboard. Other than that, I don't think he would have brought in much else. Rick, on the other hand, could have brought... He brought in his Spellskite. We know that for sure. He could have also brought in Stubborn Denial to try and be a Force Spike, but not positive on that one. I believe he found a Goblin Guide. Yeah, he did. There's no attack to be had there. You're just going to leave that guy sitting there. Yeah, we're just going to pass the turn back to Rick. Rick will end of turn, fetch away that Windswept Heath. Down to 7 he goes. So now Jorj doesn't need to find another Boros Charm. He can find Skullcrack. He can find Lava Spike. Yeah, those are about it. Okay, Rick's going to fetch out of his deck a copy of Breeding Pool. This way he has all his colors of mana. Also has now a pain-free green source, which was pretty important. Saw last turn take a point of damage to use that that Brushland to play that Ancient Stirrings. So Rick will untap here for his turn 4. His lands, he's got more lands in hand. He's got a couple I can see at least with Brushland and Windswept Heath. Jorj feels he's got to be feeling anxious about this one. He's close to ending this game. He just needs to. He needs one player targeted burn spell, I guess. But yeah, something that can't go to a spell skite. So Rick will play a forest. He's also going to play another ancient stirrings. He's looking for something. There's an explosives there, which isn't that exciting. It just gets to kill a goblin guide, which can't attack anyways. So looking at deflecting palm and Boros charm. I'm sure Jorj would be happy just seeing a reality smasher come down. That would just end the game. Even a thought not seer is fine. Deflecting palm again, very great because it doesn't actually target, so Spellskite cannot absorb that. Rick rather. So he did take the explosives. He's going to play it here as well. Again, this just kills the goblin guy, but it doesn't really matter that much. We're going to fire off an end of turn Boros charm. Rick down to 3. Jorj has a question for our Away from the Table. It's going to be about the deflecting palm. I imagine he's going to be asking it just to clarify that Spellskite cannot absorb a deflecting palm, because again, it does not target. It just says the next time a creature of your choice would deal damage. It doesn't actually say target creature. So Spellskite, if you want, you can pay 2 life to try. It just won't do anything for you. So in this spot here, he drew a lightning helix. I would attack with this goblin guide and see what Rick does. I think he's just saying go. Yeah, I would have attacked with the goblin guide. There's no real harm. Spellskite either blocks it and you can kill it with a lightning helix, or Rick taps 2 mana and pops his explosives, which then means that he has to pay life to use Spellskite, which are also okay. It puts him to 1 that way. Eternal Witness comes down. He named Human on Cavernous Souls here. He's going to get back Ancient Stirrings, it looks like. He's thinking here what he wants to do. I mean, it's pretty... Jorj, I would have fired off Helix there for sure. Because Rick would have to use his... Well, he paid 2 life for it, right? So... Wow, Revelry was the draw. That's a great draw. Jorj brought those in. I'm a little surprised by that, to be honest. Just because I think main deck, like, what are the actual targets? Because, hey, like, explosives, that's not good. We're going to Revelry on your Spellskite. This is probably going to be the game. This is going to put Rick to 1. My only argument there, game time, the fact that sure, yes, Spellskite blocks it and it might give your opponent a land. Sure, that's fine, but now you have the ability to kill the Spellskite with Lightning Helix. You can point it at Rick, make him pay the mana. I mean, either way, it's going to put him to 1 because yes, he can just pop the explosives, but you get to put him to 1, or you get to put him to kill a Spellskite. So I think you're okay either way with that trade. I think I would risk giving my opponent a land when, I mean, he's not struggling for lands anyway, so it's not like that's really going to be a big benefit to him. But Thought Not Seer here is very timely, as it's going to get to take away this Lightning Helix. But he knows there's a palm now, so he knows he can't attack. So he's going to know that he can't attack with basically anything unless he has a way to kill his own creature. He also now has to fade a draw from Jorj, or probably a couple draws, in fact. He's going to take away Helix because otherwise he's just dead. Yep. He's going to take away Helix, leave him with a palm. The Helix is exiled. Yeah, there we go. We got that fixed. Another Eternal Witness in hand for Rick there. All right, just passes back. Jorj, did you find a kill spell? I think you found a Skull Crack, which is going to be good enough. That is, in fact, a Skull Crack. We'll go to game 3. All right, so Jorj forces the game 3. So we'll go over the sideboards now fully. So Jorj gets access to 3 copies of Path to Exile, 3 Destructive Revelry, 2 Core Firewalker, 2 Grafdigger's Cage, 2 Deflecting Palm, and 3 Searing Blood. So we know that he brought in Deflecting Palms, which I also agree with. We also know that he brought in Revelry, which I'm not convinced of. The only real targets in Rick's list are some sideboard cards and main deck explosives. But you're never going to hit, like, there's no point in hitting explosives usually. Unless you get them when they're tapped out or something like that, only have 1 mana. Everything else I don't really care for. Path is good, obviously. Core Firewalker doesn't do anything. Cage doesn't do anything. And Searing Bloods is not going to be big enough usually, so... On Rick's side, we have 3 Stubborn Denial, 2 Relic of Progenitus, 2 Spellskite, 2 Rest in Peace, 2 Stony Silence, 2 Grafdigger's Cage, a Creeping Corrosion, and All is Dust. So, out of Rick's sideboard, I like... We already saw him bring in Spellskite, which I like. Relic's no good, Rest in Peace no good, Stony Silence no good, Cage no good, Creeping Corrosion no good, All is Dust is no good. Stubborn Denial is an interesting one, though. You have the choice of it. It can be a Force Spike or just a Forceful Counterspell. I don't know if you really want it that much, but I think out of your sideboard choices, that is one of your better options. I don't think you want to be bringing in anything else, though. And I'm not even sure if you really want to bring in the denials. It could be okay, but... All right, so we're going to have Rick on the play for Game 3. He's going to be looking for his turn 1 acceleration with that either a Birds of Paradise or a Noble Hierarch. And if he does have that, Jorj will be looking for the way to interact with that on turn 1 with multiple choices. Lightning Bolt. Actually, just Bolt he has, actually. Okay. So Jorj not actually able to deal with a turn 1 creature outside of Lightning Bolt. Interesting. I guess they don't have that many ways on turn 1, do they? All right, so Jorj is making sure everything is thoroughly shuffled. All right, look at our opening 7, see what we can find. I believe that's Jorj's one-of copy of Flames of the Bloodhand in his opener. It's a lot of burn spell you see very often. It used to get played a little more before, but doesn't see very much play nowadays. Again, with these decks, Burn has been switching slightly over to just red-white instead of green. The green has gone back to being a sideboard color for Revelries and that kind of thing. A lot of them are cutting Atarkus commands right now. So, Flames of the Bloodhand can fill in as a 5th Skullcrack effect. Rick is thinking here on his 7, though. He doesn't know if he wants to keep it. Looks like both players have kept. Rick will start things off here with a Yapamaya Coast and an Ancient Stirrings. So Rick at 19 We're going to have a look at the top 5, pick a colorless card, put it into our hand. What are we going to take? Thought Knots here, okay. It's not coming down turn 2, obviously. He doesn't currently have any acceleration. Jorj's draw, did not get a good look at it, so I'm not too sure what that was. He should already have everything he needs, though. So we're going to start it off here with a Bloodstained Mire and a Goblin Guide. So we're going to have Jorj at 17 is my guess. Rick going to be at 17 as well after the attack comes across. Actually, Jorj is going to find a mountain here. So down to 19 is Jorj. Rick will be 17 in a second. He kind of helps Jorj out there. He turns it sideways for him. Was there a Goblin Guide trigger? I didn't see it if there was. We might have missed the Goblin Guide trigger there. There's a Cavernous Souls. Likely naming Eldrazi. It might be naming human again, but I doubt it. Jorj will draw for his turn. I believe he found a land this time. Yeah, he found a Wooded Foothills. A Lava Spike in hand. We're going to play a Wooded Foothills. It's not the one he drew, so he does have a third land available to him. In we come for 2 more points of damage. Trigger is going to reveal a Birds of Paradise. Rick will fall to 15. No blocks to be had. He's also not playing any Blessed Alliances, which is a little bit rough. Lava Spike you. What do you say to this, sir? Rick is thinking here. He says, yep, it resolves. I'm at 12. And Jorj just passes back. So Rick will draw a Birds of Paradise. There's a temple, so we have a Thought Knot Seer mana now. We have enough Thought Knot Seer mana, so we could see that come down here, which I think is fine. 4/4 is hard for Burn to get out of the way usually. We'll have a look at Jorj's hand rather. Jorj has a response, however, first. So we're going to sacrifice our fetch land. What are we going to find here? It would have to be Lightning Bolt, wouldn't it? That he has right now? Yeah, he has no other 1-drop instant speed burn spells, so. I'm guessing it's Lightning Bolt. Yep, he bolts them. So we look at his hand. Flames of the Blood hand, and I think just 3 lands? Is that right? Inspiring Advantage and Wooded Foothills for sure. And we're going to take away Flames of the Blood hand. But yeah, I think Jorj's hand now is just lands. Draw was a Lightning Helix. Yeah, so his hand is Foothills, Mountain, Lightning Helix right now. I mean, he's not in a bad spot. He's 2 burn spells away from killing Rick. But he's not in a great spot either. I'm curious if Rick attacks here. Depends on what else he has in his hand. Haven't really got a good look at Rick's hand yet this game, so I'm not sure if he's got a lot of creatures. Thought Knot Seer can go sideways without any real concerns. Eldrazi Displacer. Okay. Yep, Thought Not Seer will attack. Jorj says, yeah, I've got no blocks. I'll go to 14. Okay, not a big deal there. Still got plenty of life total to work with if you're Jorj. Rick does as well, to be fair. 9 is still a good number against burn. It's 3 spells, but when you know your opponent has 2 lands in hand at least, you're not as worried. Displacer comes down, and alongside that, he'll also play a Temple Garden. End of turn, he's going to try to Lightning Helix him, but Rick did bring in Stubborn Isles. He'll only take 1 damage here because he has to make blue mana off Yavimaya Coast, but it's better than taking 3. That's a pretty big spell to have there, so... All right, we're just passed back for Jorj again. He drew a Boros Charm. That's a good one. That's a good one. Oh boy, so is Drowner of Hope though. So Jorj is on Boros Charm or he's dead. Yeah, Jorj needs exactly Boros Charm to end the game here. So we can tap down Goblin Guy, get in for 7, which means Jorj is dead the following turn. I guess... No, that wouldn't work. Displacer takes away any Deflecting Palm shenanigans. So yeah, 7 damage. Boros Charm you. You go to 4. Jorj will go to 7 because he's not going to be able to block either of those creatures, and the last card in his hand is a land that Rick knows about. So, all right, let's go. Boros off the top. Can we get there? So down to 6 goes Jorj. He takes a peek there. You see at the top card of his deck. He doesn't even want to find a land, apparently. He's just going to go ahead and fail to find. But now he's going to look. Sacred Foundry, sure, that's fine. All right. What do you got, Jorj? Did you find a Boros Charm? He only plays 5 total 4 damage burn spells. 4 Boros Charms and a 1 of Flames of the Blood Hand. Rick giving it a good shuffle. He's taking away the Boros Charms. Put them on the bottom of the deck. We don't want to see one of those coming off here. Well, I'm sure Captain Harris does. Captain Harris is rooting for a Boros Charm here. I know he is. Let's go. Windmill this one. Just windmill that card. That is a Scalding Tarn. That is going to be the game. All right.